Hey, good evening, and welcome to another Facebook Live event with the Innovative Dad. I am Dr. Ari Yaris. I'm a licensed psychologist and a parent coach, and I'm here to talk to you today about back-to-school transitions and getting kids ready for school, whether it's kindergarten or high school, and just to kind of give you, as parents, some tips and some ideas of things to do as the start of the school year is drawing much, much closer. In fact, in some places in the United States, school has already started. So here in the DC metro area, school is just a couple of weeks away. And I know that lots of parents that I've talked to are sort of getting ready to think about being in school mode and what that means for their family. And I think it's really important to get a school year off to a good start and thinking about what are the things that you can do to help your child from a confidence standpoint, from an attitude standpoint, and help them with performance both socially and academically. But the switch from the transition of summer to school can be difficult for some kids. There are huge changes in routine. Tension can increase. There's much more structure often in families during the school year, and more requirements and more things to be concerned about. And of course, that adjustment is going to depend upon the child for the most part. But there are things that we as parents can do, and the rest of our family, to manage the pace of life, and things that we can do in terms of planning ahead, and setting realistic expectations, and maintaining a positive attitude that will help kids make that adjustment to the school year. So let's talk a little bit about getting our kids ready for school. And things to think about. So let's start first about what's going on before school starts, since most of us are in that period. So let's start with the real basic thing is to just make sure that our kids are in good physical and mental health. If your kids need doctor's appointments, get them scheduled early. Make sure that you go over with your pediatrician any emotional or psychological development concerns that you have. Your pediatrician can check in with you and let you know whether or not this is something that is normal and age appropriate, or if this is something that requires a little bit more assessment. The sooner that you jump on something that you're worried about, the better that you'll be able to help your child. Right, by now, you've probably also gotten a huge packet from the school of lots of information. Now, it is vitally important that you do go through that, and you go through it as soon as you possibly can. That packet has information about teachers potentially for your children, classroom routines, school supplies, sign-ups for after-school activities. It could have the school calendar in it, transportation information, pickup information, those lovely health and emergency forms that you're going to want to take to your doctor's office when you schedule that visit, and then possibly information about volunteer opportunities, even information about the curriculum. So go through that, mark it up. Write questions in the margins and then collect those questions and then figure out who's the appropriate person to be reaching out to follow up with those questions so that you are giving and getting the right information. Now, if there's a school calendar in there, grab that and start marking up your own calendar. Check and see whether or not your school offers a Google Calendar or an iCal feed. This is a great way for you to automatically get the school's digital calendar into your personal calendar without having to sit there and transfer all the events manually. But mark off the important nights, back to school night, parent-teacher conferences, holidays, teacher workshop days or teacher in-service days where you might not have coverage, and make sure that you're thinking about what you need days that you may need to work and your kids don't have school. And as well for those evening activities, marking ahead and checking to see whether or not you're going to need a babysitter or figure out alternate coverage plans for your kids so that you can get to an evening event at the school. Now, if you found that a health form and those emergency information forms in that packet and you've sent it to your doctor, this is something that's really important. Make copies of them before you send them on to the school. I would encourage you, if you can, scan them in. Save them on your computer or upload them to a service like OneNote or Google Drive so that you have access to it. Because remember, these are forms that are often very standard and you can cycle them through other activities. So you could use the school form potentially for soccer or even for camp the following summer because they'll still be current enough. So do hang on to them, make some copies, and put them someplace that you'll find them again. Now, of course, school supplies. The earlier you get to your school supply purchasing, the better. It's going to make you a lot less neurotic. Those school supply sales are already out there. Make sure that you're picking up what you need. Check the lists. Often schools are asking for specific brands of things because they may be doing a communal supply for them rather than school supplies being your own individual child's. Engage your kids within this process to get their buy-in and build up some excitement about the school year and perhaps lower some of their apprehension. So if there are places where they have choice in the materials that they can be purchasing, whether it's binder color or size of the kinds of the folders or whatever it is, many schools send their supply list to places like Staples, Office Depot, and Office Max or Target, and you can pick up that supply list and actually walk through the store with it. Bear in mind that if you're ordering someplace like Amazon, that you give yourself ample time for those things to arrive before your child needs them on the first week of school. And pay attention to what you're purchasing and hang on to those receipts because you may overpurchase or you may get a late request that you need to swap something out. You brought the wrong brand of highlighters or dry erase markers or something like that. Okay, so that's some basic logistical stuff. Now, of course, your kids have been on a summer schedule, which if you're like my family, it's a little bit more relaxed. Bedtimes may have been later, a little less strict about them. So you're going to want to start to reestablish your bedtime and mealtime routines at least a week before school starts if you can. Talk to your kids about the benefits of prepping for school routine and not having them be overwhelmed or tired by their schoolwork and their activities. Make sure that you're including any pre-bedtime reading for younger children, household chores, time for independently wind down for other kids for them to read in their rooms. Now, I know the next thing you're going to say is, well, what about screen time as part of unwinding? And I would say as you shift into school year mode, you're going to want to make sure that screen time is under control and at a reasonable amount for your kids. And of course, not near bedtime. We know from the research that the rays that are coming off of, in terms of what you're seeing from a screen is going to impact your ability to sleep. Now, some devices do have a night mode. I don't know whether or not those are truly effective in dealing with that or not. I haven't seen any research on it as of yet. But ease back on the TV watching if you can. And in doing that and getting them to engage in other activities, whether it's puzzles, flashcards, coloring, or reading, and whether that's in the morning or the evening, that's going to help ease them back into that learning process, which I think is really important. Now, if your child is young or new to a school, schedule a time to go and visit the school. In fact, the school may have open hours before the school year starts, sort of a meet the teacher kind of thing. So if you can, if that's something formal, make sure that you mark it off on your calendar. If it's not, see if you can arrange it informally. You may not be able to meet all of the teachers, but for a young child that's going to be in a new school or in a new part of a building, it may be helpful to sort of wander through those areas, look at the classrooms, see the lunchroom, and so on. As part of that, if you have a child that's going to have a lock on their locker, now if it's a lock that you're supplying, having them practice opening and closing that lock at home is a really great strategy for them. That is a place of huge, huge anxiety for many new middle school students who are often getting a lock on their locker for the first time. And I have found in my experience as a principal, spending time having the kids practicing locking and unlocking and turning it this way and turning it that way has been really useful to reduce that anxiety of, oh, I'm standing at my locker and I'm rushing to get to class. So pay attention to that. And then if you're making a visit to a school, solicit questions from your kids. Ask them what they want to know about and hang on to those questions as you go through your visit. Now, of course, the start of the school year does mean, for many of us, new school clothes. Now, this is a place where I would say don't go crazy just yet. In most places in the United States, your early fall wardrobe can be your summer wardrobe as long as it meets whatever dress code or uniform code that your school has. So that is something that you want to pay attention to in your school packet and making sure that you're falling within that. It might be that you need to stick to t-shirts and no tank tops, or something like that. Now, of course, school starting means homework is going to start. And you can check out on my Facebook page and on the website, I've talked about homework in the past and things to do to set up routines for it. But you should designate and clear a place for homework to happen. For older kids, it could be in their room or in a quiet place of the house. For younger kids, I would encourage you to place them somewhere that you can monitor them and provide supervision and encouragement for their work. So the kitchen table, the dining room table, they're great places for that. Also, in terms of sort of building in that routine, is make sure there are spaces in your house for backpacks and lunch boxes to go, so that as they come in the house, the backpack goes in one place, the lunchbox gets emptied and gets put in another place. Have them empty their backpack and make this part of their routine so that you don't find out 3 months later that there's something growing on the bottom of their backpack, or that something growing is on top of a permission slip that is due 2 days ago. All things that I'm sure that one time or another we've experienced. So just build that into routine, and build a routine if that they've got that important notice that's in their bag of where it goes. So in our family, we have a magnetic binder clip that is hanging on our refrigerator. Our kids have learned that if there's something important in their bag, it comes out of their bag and gets hung on that clip. That clip is labeled parents, and it's our responsibility as the adults to check that. Now, one other thing you may want to do in advance of the school year, just again to make life a little bit easier, is to do some meal prep ahead so that you have the ability to be present and engaged. So, freeze a few easy dinners in advance that you can just throw in the microwave and reheat, so that you can pay attention to what's going on that first week of school, rather than it just being, oh Lord, my kids have come home from school and now I've got to get dinner on the table and all of those extra stressors. Because remember, getting school started and getting back into that routine is a stress on you as well, because you've been used to the summer routine as well. Okay. So that's all stuff to do before school gets started. Now, looking at that first week of school and what it's going to be like, again, thinking about your own time, you're going to want to clear your own schedule as much as possible. So if you can avoid having a business trip, meetings for your place of worship, or an outside organization that you're engaged with, or even projects, that's a bad week to start finishing the garage or the basement or something. You want to be as available as possible to help your children acclimate to what's going on with school, and getting used to that school routine, and dealing with any confusion, any anxiety, any stress that they're having at the start of the school year. Something else that I'm a really big fan of is making those lunches the night before school, and getting kids as engaged as possible with this. So you may want to do some meal planning around lunch. I'm taking this on Monday, this on Tuesday, this on Wednesday. Do not get stressed out if your kids are not interested in variety. That is totally fine. But this will help you make sure that you have the supplies in place. I encourage my kids to make 2 lunches at a time. So Monday night, or Sunday night rather, they're making lunch for Monday and Tuesday. And it just means that Monday night we don't have to deal with lunch making for them. It's one less thing. Certainly, as your kids hit later elementary school years, they should be making their lunches whenever possible, and getting them engaged in making those sandwiches and putting things together. I'm also a big fan, if it's something that's allowed in your school and feasible in your life, of those thermos reheatable containers. It gets your kids away from taking that peanut butter and jelly sandwich or sun butter and jelly sandwich in a nut-free school. And you can put mac and cheese or pierogies or any number of things in those, heat it up in the microwave in the morning, drop it in a thermos container, and then you've got warm food for your child around lunchtime. We found those to be really effective. Okay. Of course, you got to get those alarm clocks set. I encourage you to have something to help wake your kids up in their own room, beyond your alarm clock going off on your phone and you running in there to wake them up. Work with your kids and talk to them about what time that alarm clock should be set. If you've got smart switches installed in your kids' rooms, or smart plugs, you can also set the lights to go on as another way of getting them to wake up. Now, that first week of school, speaking of time, you're going to want to leave plenty of extra time uh, in the morning and making sure that your kids are able to get up, get their breakfast into them, and get ready to school. Make the assumption that Murphy from Murphy's Law is going to be helping out in a less than positive way during some of those mornings of the first week of school. So if you're driving your kids, that means that there's going to be an accident at that major intersection that you need to get through, or traffic on the highway, or what have you. Or your kid is going to flip out because they can't find something that they thought was in their bag. So just give yourself some cushion. If your kids are taking the bus, practice figuring out how much time it takes to get from the bus stop to the house so that you're aware of that and you can get that morning routine squared away really well. Now, of course, for younger children, if you can plan to volunteer in their classroom periodically through the year, that's also a really great thing. I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But get prepped as well for after school, not just the morning of school. Review with your children about what you're going to do when they get home after school and if you're not there. So if your kids are going to be latchkey and they're going to let themselves into the house, what has to happen? Be as specific as possible about what your expectations are with your kids, particularly with the younger kids. I would encourage you to put a note card in their backpacks with the names and numbers of a neighbor who's home during the day, as well as the numbers that you can be reached, so that if there's an emergency, they know where to go, what to do as they're walking from the bus stop or for their carpool to the house. Just really important basic safety things. And leave them a list in the house of the things that they're supposed to do. Okay. Your kids are going to potentially come home with school books or online programs that they're supposed to be using. So take time to go through those and pay attention to them. You don't have to read your kid's math book. And that's not what I'm suggesting, but giving a sense of what are the subjects that they're going to be covering during the year, and sharing your enthusiasm for what your kids are learning and what those subjects are. And that you're going to reinforce that there is a natural progression of learning that occurs during the school year. Remind kids that learning skills takes time, and it takes some repetition. And you're going to want to encourage your kids to be as patient as possible and be attentive. All right, during that first week of school, it's a great time to send a quick note, not home, but to your teacher, your kid's teacher at school, letting them know, how things went, that your kid is excited, that your kid is nervous about this, any updates that you might have for them. And that you want to hear about how your kids are doing in school, which I think is really, really important to be expressing that. In doing that, again, I mentioned before, you want to put back to school night and other things like that on your calendar. Find out what are the best ways of communicating with the teacher. Some schools have apps that they're using and they want you to go through that, or that there's a website portal rather than sending a direct email. Whatever works. And find out whether or not just an old-fashioned note in your kid's bag will suffice. But you really want to be conveying a desire to be partnering with your child's teachers to build their learning experience. And I think that's a great way to start that relationship off with a teacher on the right foot. Now, of course, there are also tons of other professionals within the school, and you're going to want to know who they are as well and what those resources are. So find out, it might be, knowing who the principal and assistant principal are in the school, who the front office staff is, who you're supposed to call when your child is going to be absent, and letting them know. Who the school psychologist, the counselor, or social worker are in the school, if there are any intervention supports around reading or math specialists, and of course the school nurse, as well as something that may need to be a point of contact for you. That doesn't mean that you need to go in and meet with each of these individuals, but it's helpful to know who they are and that they are available to you as a resource. Okay, now we do know that the start of the school year is going to come with some anxiety for all kids. And believe it or not, as somebody who spent most of my professional career working in schools, it comes with a little bit of anxiety for the school staff as well. New kids, new colleagues, new curriculum, all of those things. But you want to make sure that you're letting your kids know that you care. Put notes in their lunchbox or in their school bag that's just, love you. I have a good friend of ours who draws the most amazing pictures on his kids' lunchboxes. You don't have to go that whole hog, but just something that when they pull it out of their bag is going to let them know that they're loved and that they're cared for. Um, and that's going to help reinforce their ability to cope. Now, remember that kids absorb our own attitudes towards things. So if you're feeling anxious about something related to the school year, you're going to need to model optimism and confidence for your child because they're going to pick up on it. And you can let them know that it's okay to be a little anxious, but as they build into routine and get familiar with things, their anxiety will start to subside and they'll get used to what's going on. Now, for some kids, that first week of school feels like a complete disaster. Try not to overreact to it. There may be some separation anxiety the young child is dealing with, some shyness with their teacher, but the school staff is there to help them adjust to these things. When you drop off, try not to linger. Don't stand outside the door staring inside. Reassure your kid that you love them and that you'll think of them during the day and that you're going to be back. Keep yourself calm and positive and get out of there. Okay? Now, some kids may be feeling anxious because they had a bad experience the year before. So if they had a difficult time with their academics or a social problem where they're feeling teased or bullied, they may have a higher level of fear or reluctance to get back into school. So make sure that you've shared those concerns with the school and that you've confirmed that the problem has been addressed or is in the process of being addressed. And then reassure your kids that you're working with the school to make sure that to prevent these kinds of issues from happening. You're trying to reinforce your child's ability to cope. Talk to them about strategies to manage this situation, whether or not it's how they're going to work with homework, how they're going to handle it if this kid bothers them at school, all of those things. And if the problem starts to persist, if this is something that doesn't go away despite best efforts, stay in contact with the school and make sure that you're maintaining open lines of communication. For younger kids, in terms of overcoming anxiety about the school year, it's also helpful to arrange some play dates so that they can start to build social connections outside of school with the kids in their class and really build those positive relationships. I think that's something that's really, really important. And as I mentioned before, if you are able to volunteer in your child's classroom, now mind you, this is more so for younger kids. Having worked in middle schools for a portion of my career, most middle school students are not interested in having their parent in the back of the classroom. Find other ways to volunteer and be engaged with the school. But when you are able to do that, it does keep you linked to sort of the ebb and flow of what's going on in the school year, and I think that is important. And so some schools offer volunteer opportunities that happen during the day, which may be difficult for working parents, but there are other things that you can do to help the school out that may take place after hours or that you can do from the comfort of your own living room. You won't find out unless you ask. Now, that's school, but the start of the school year also means the start of extracurricular activities. And this is the mantra that I give parents all the time. When you're looking at extracurricular activities, you want to go for quality, not for quantity. Your kid does not need to be doing taekwondo, swimming, ballet, piano lessons, and fencing. It's a lot. And most kids really benefit from just engaging in one or two activities that are fun, that are going to reinforce their social development, and that are going to teach them new skills. If they have too much scheduled time, particularly for younger children, that's going to make it harder for them and take time away from schoolwork and just from their overall reserves of energy and resilience. Think about your family schedule when you're putting together your extracurricular activities, what the logistics are, how many different places you're going to, what carpooling is going to be looking like, and how that's going to impact dinner and homework time. And make sure that you've got a backup for carpooling so that if you can't get to your child, that somebody else can. If your school offers activities, I always encourage you to look at those first. That can help with aftercare situations and just make it a little bit easier in terms of childcare coverage, particularly if you're not able to pick your kids up right away at the end of the school day. You're going to want to find out if there's a pattern of homework for your child. So if Monday is the day where everything gets assigned, that might not be the day that you want to have your kid in an extracurricular activity. Or if there's always going to be a test on Friday, Thursday might not be the great day for an activity. So those are just things to think about. Now, of course, problems do happen throughout the school year. We want school to be a positive and productive experience for kids. When that does happen, when you start to see extreme opposition or you see fear of school, uh, or really specific learning or psychological challenges that a child is having, and things are happening for an extended period of time, that's when we do want you to reach out to the school, get in touch with them, also reach out to your pediatrician, let them know what's going on. It's part of your child's care team and helping and seeing if there's direct support or indirect support that can be helpful for identifying and then reducing whatever that problem is that's showing up. For most kids, a handful of intervention strategies will help remedy the problem, and some others may need some more intensive supports. These are all things that happen, but if you've got that successful homeschool communication going on, it's going to be a lot easier to get those in place. But to sum it up, kids are incredibly resilient, and despite the fact that they're going to be having this huge transition back into a school year, with our support as their parents and with our encouragement, which is really, really important, they're going to be able to thrive in their school experience and have a wonderful and enriching school year. So that's my guidance for getting ready for school this year and getting your kids prepped for K and beyond, so whatever grade they happen to be going in. And if you're a teacher, some of these pieces of advice might be helpful for you as well. As always, I encourage you to continue to pay attention to the Facebook page for updates, as well as checking out my website, www.ariaris.com. You can also find me on Instagram at ariaris and on Twitter at enoparent. All places that you can find things around going on. And our next Facebook Live will be coming up in a few weeks. If you happen to be located in the DC metro area, I'm offering some in-person workshops coming up soon, and you can find out that information on Facebook and on my website as well. So I wish your kids a smooth and successful start to the school year. I wish you as parents a smooth and successful start to the school year. And as always, I wish you happy parenting, and we'll talk to you soon.